Yasher Koach to Cantor Campbell, leading us in our Musaf service and the entire service today. As you can see, I'm not up on the bima, but I'm with everybody because since it's a summer Shabbat and a little more intimate of our 500 people or so, I'm going to ask you to actually take out your Chumash. That's your textbook today. And we're going to look at a piece of the Haftorah that Jay Harwood chanted that we're going to hopefully glean some learning from Tshaba, which we will commemorate on Monday evening. I'm going to ask you to turn to page 1000. And we're going to look at a verse from the beginning, the middle, and the end to figure out what Isaiah was trying to say thousands of years ago. And I want to begin by speaking about Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, which historically commemorates the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, and so many other calamities in Jewish history. But there's a piece of our tradition that we don't often focus on that this year just really stuck out to me. Because our tradition tells us that one day, Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the year, is going to be turned into a day of celebration. And I just want you to think about that, because our happiest day of the year, Simchat Torah, this past year, was turned into a day of destruction. And so how do we waffle back and forth between these ideas of days of celebration and days of destruction? And it's interesting because over the last 10 years or so, there was even a debate about ritual practice of Tisha B'Av. Some people fast the full day, other people fast half a day, and some people were even saying, let's not fast at all because we have Jerusalem. We're okay as a Jewish people. But this year, Tisha B'Av takes on a meaning that in our own lifetime has never taken on before. You know, on your phone, when the pictures come up from what you did last year, and you said, oh yeah, I remember that. Well, this year, the pictures came up on the phone this week, and they were pictures from our Sinai Temple trip to Israel last year, this week, just days before Tisha B'Av. And we were standing in Jerusalem, at the stones that the Romans tossed down on the Jews, right by the southern wall next to the Kotel. And what were we doing? We were celebrating B'nai Mitzvah of young people from Sinai Temple at the stones of the walls that they threw upon the Jews that they would never do this again, and we were doing that. That, last year, was the message of Tisha B'Av. And I want to make a distinction also between two different prophets. The prophet Isaiah, which Jay read from this morning, which we're going to talk about in a moment, and the prophet Jeremiah, who authored the book of Eicha, the book of Lamentations. And I want to make a distinction of when they lived. Isaiah lived before the destruction of the first temple, around 600 before the Common Era. And here he is prophesying about what will happen, and it didn't happen until 150 years later. People thought he was a mashuga, a crazy man on the streets. Jeremiah, the words that we read on Monday night, were written at the time of the destruction of the temple. He was witnessing a desolate Jerusalem. And if you look on page 1000, the first word of the Haftorah is chazon. It means vision. Why shouldn't it? It should have said maybe re'eh. It should have said navi. It should maybe have said it's a prophecy. It is something that they saw. But instead the Isaiah uses the word chazon. It's a vision. And usually we think of a vision being something very clear, right? I have 20/20 vision, which I do not. And why is that? There's a Hasidic story by Reb Levi of Berdichev, and he tells a story of a young man who got a new suit from his parents to go to the synagogue. And the child went to the synagogue, and of course he saw his friends, and they began playing in places where they were not supposed to, and he ripped the suit, and he came home crying, and the parents said, don't worry, we're going to get you a new suit. And so the next Shabbat, the boy goes to the synagogue, and he's playing again, and of course, he finds those same friends, and he gets into trouble once again, and he comes back, and there's stains all over it, and this suit is all ripped up. And he thought that his parents would buy him another suit. And they did. But they didn't give it to him. Instead, they put the suit in the closet, And periodically they would open up the door to show this young boy the suit that could be. And Reb Levi of Berdichev explains that is like the temple in Jerusalem, which will one day be the messianic era of redemption. At first, we messed up, and then we got another temple. But after that second temple, when we were exiled for the next 2,000 years, we saw a vision, but a chazon is a vision that is blurry, and we have to see through what it can actually look like. And so for thousands of years, we sort of saw that suit in the closet, but we never got to wear it. And over these last few years, we thought we were, if you wish, home free. But this year, what does that suit in the closet look like? And what will it mean to us in the days, months, and year ahead as well? And so when you look at this Haftorah, again, it's Isaiah saying, shape up, or we're going to see what's going to happen. And it's interesting because if you come on Yom Kippur, which I'm assuming most of us, if not all of us, will be in this building, the Haftorah is Isaiah, but it's Isaiah many, many chapters down, chapter 57, and he says the same thing. He says, I see everybody. You're all putting on your talis, you're wearing your tefillin, you're lighting Shabbat candles, you're studying Torah. It's wonderful. The physical observances are happening, but the spiritual aspect is not. You know, as a young rabbi over a decade ago, somebody once told me they wear tefillin every day. This is not at Sinai Temple. I said, wow, that's such a beautiful mitzvah. I hope you continue to do that. How do you have that discipline? And this person said, you know, Rabbi, I wear tefillin every day because I know that sometimes I'll be doing not such great things in my business, and the tefillin that I wear in the morning will protect me for what I will do. And I thought about that story this week when I read the words of Isaiah, because our rituals don't protect us for what will happen when we go out, but rather our rituals should inform our spiritual practice of what our life looks like when we leave this synagogue, when we walk into the world as a Jew. And it's interesting in this vision, this chazon, this blurry vision that Isaiah gives us, it's unlike the earlier prophets where they have very clear visions. Do this or you will get that. But the visions of the later prophets are blurry, and in fact, they're given in poetic language. They're hard to even understand. And in this case, they bring witnesses. And when you think, okay, who will the witnesses be? Maybe our ancestors. But in this case, on page 1000, verse 2, who are the witnesses? As Jay chanted in the trope, which was Eicha, the trope that we'll hear on Monday night, Shimu Shamayim v'hazini eretz, hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth. The witnesses that are witnessing this prophecy for us to fulfill are not people, but rather they're heaven and earth. And it's interesting because Shimu Shamayim first brings the heavens and then the earth. But in a couple of weeks, when we read one of the last Torah portions of the year called Ha'azinu, it's actually Rabbi Guzik's bat mitzvah anniversary. I wasn't there then, but I know. Ha'azinu hashamayim b'hadabera v'tishma ha'aretz imrefi. The same witnesses are brought as Moses gives the final speech to the people, heaven and earth. But this time Isaiah switches it around. First he calls upon the heavens, and then he calls upon the earth. And the rabbis ask, why is that? And Rashi gives a beautiful example, because when the Jewish people, when the Israelites were in the wilderness, they were experiencing all of the miracles. From the exodus of slavery to Egypt to the crossing of the sea, even in the desert when they complained, they got manna, they got meat. They saw things that were happening from heaven. But when Isaiah is speaking, there's no more Moses in their life. They're entering the promised land, and they have to do it themselves. And so Rashi says, first, Moses is closer to heaven now, right? Because he is no longer with us on this earth. And he prays for Moses to basically do the bargaining with God, and if it works in heaven, then it'll trickle down to this earth. And the same is true today, right? We come here to pray, but we don't just pray for things to happen. We pray for us to be able to do those things on earth that will allow these changes in the world. And I want you to go to verse 16 for a moment. It's found on page 1002, because Isaiah does give a formula of what to do. How many days are in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? This is the interactive piece. 10, the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of repentance. And if you look at page 1002, verse 16, Isaiah says, look, it's not looking good out here, but if you do some of these things, maybe things can change around. What should people do? Verse 16, wash yourselves clean, put your evil doings away from my sight, cease to do evil, learn to do good, devote yourselves to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the rights of the orphan, and defend the cause of the widow. And Rashi says if you add them up, it actually adds to 9, because there are 9 days, including the 10th day, which is Kol Nidre, in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And here we are, 10 weeks away from Rosh Hashanah, and Isaiah is saying, you have 10 weeks. We can do this. This is your formula. Begin thinking about what justice means in your life. And finally, I want to find out what exactly justice means, because it is very confusing. Usually when you go to court, the prosecutor is different than the advocate, right? Somebody who's prosecuting somebody is not going to advocate for somebody. In fact, they're going to go against them. But the relationship between God and the people is very different. I want to read you some quotes that God tells us in Isaiah, and it seems like it's hypocritical. And I'll tell you why. The very one God who accused, woe, you are a sinful nation, also says in our Hallel service, Pidchuli Sharet Tzedek, open the gate so the righteous may enter. How can we be a sinful nation and then say, you righteous people come in? Another example. God who says a people heavy with sin also says, all of you are righteous. One more. God says, even if you increase your prayer, I will not listen to you. You can sit here all day long on Yom Kippur and it won't matter. God also says, even before they call out to me, I will answer. What do we listen to? And the rabbis say, based on these contradictory statements between listening and not, they say, from here we learn that even prophetic accusations are meant to bring healing and recovery. Right now, we are finishing the 3 weeks in between the 17th day of Tammuz and Tshaba B'Av, literally heading to the high holidays. And these moments of prophetic accusation, they're not meant simply to accuse, but rather it's harsh love. They're meant not only to rebuke, but allow us to begin that healing and recovery. And finally, on verse 27, on page 1004, the last line of the Haftorah, which I love about these Haftorahs, they never end on a sad note. Through all the difficulties of our history, they always end with the moment of tikva, of hope. Tzion Bait Tipade, verse 27. If you were ever in Greek life, and I was not on a college campus, I learned my Greek life from this verse. In fact, the fraternity, ZBT. Anybody know what that stands for? Not in Greek? It's this verse. Tzion Bait Tipade. The house of Zion shall be redeemed. I'm not joking about that. It's true. You can look at the charter of ZBT fraternity, and these are a group of Jewish men on a college campus that took our tradition in this Haftarah before Tisha B'Av and said, with our actions, the house of Zion can be redeemed. And the question I have here is, who was Isaiah speaking to? Some rabbis say, you know what? It was that generation, 150 years before the temple was destroyed. They had to fix their actions. Maybe it was the generation of the temple that was destroyed. But really, it was for all of us. It was for all future generations. For how do we do it? We bring redemption by mishpat, by justice, and tzedakah, of righteousness. Those two things, righteousness and justice, are often paired in our prophetic tradition. One is the letter of the law. We know what we need to do. But the other is the spirit of the law. It's not only our physical actions, but it's our spiritual thoughts. And those should never stand in the way of upholding truth. And so I go back to my phone, not on Shabbat, but during this week. when those pictures popped up of all of us standing in Jerusalem last year. There were young children dancing in the streets of Jerusalem. On Monday night, we'll read Eicha. We'll read that the streets of Jerusalem were desolate of children. Last year it felt so simple. Tshaba B'Av, it's just a memory. But this year, Eicha, it feels so right. The timeless message that we must be reminded of time and time again. Monday evening, if you come here for the reading of Eicha, we'll be in Cone Chapel, and you will sit on the floor. We'll do that not just for our ancestors, but also for us. We'll be reminded of the words, Tzion Bayit Tipadeh, that once again it will take all of us for Zion to be redeemed. We were reminded of that suit that Rabbi Levi of Berdichev told us about, those parents that put it in the closet only for us to see. We'll be reminded that when we see that suit, it will allow us to create those relationships between each other, between God, and between Jews around the world, so that one day those rabbis will be right, that Tshaba B'Av, the saddest day of our Jewish calendar, will be once again turned into a moment of redemption and a celebration of joy. Shabbat Shalom.